Welcome to New Life Devotions, leaning into encouragement and taking our next steps in following Jesus. Today we continue in a survey of Romans.
Romans 6:6-7. So we know that our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power in our lives. For we're no longer slaves to sin. For when we died with Christ, we were set free from the power of sin. You know, the interesting thing about this verse is I actually think it's meant to bring freedom and grace into our lives. And so often it actually brings guilt and shame. I know in my own life, I've had seasons where sin just felt like it had so much power. And maybe you're actually in that season too. When you read this verse and you start believing lies of like, oh my gosh, am I actually a follower of Jesus? It feels like sin still has power in my life. Here's what this verse means to me. That sin no longer has power, but we can still give sin power. I'm gonna explain it like this. McDonald's has no power over me. I've been set free from the power of a McChicken, of a Whopper, of a Big Mac. I'm set free. However, I might still, on occasion, give power to that thing. And maybe that's true in your own life also. I think of it as a rocket ship. I've been reading and watching all these documentaries with my wife about space and traveling to space. See, rockets for the most part, they're the same. What's actually the most important aspect, I think, is about 80% of the rocket is actually taken up by fuel, by its power. And we know that with the wrong fuel, it's a disaster. My question to you is this: what are you giving power to in your life? Is it something that is actually feeding into the future of your life, or is it actually leading to a path of destruction? I think that's one of the most powerful things that Jesus talks about, is actually trajectory in our life. That whatever we give power to is actually setting the trajectory. Jesus seemed to have this way of spending time with people, even knowing though that their struggle, what they were going through, they might have been living in sin. He talks about sitting with tax collectors and prostitutes, people that we might look at and say they've given power to sin. But Jesus looks at their life and actually looks deeper than we see and looks at their trajectory. So he says there's a lot of people that appear close to Jesus in attitude, but he actually says they're whitewashed tombs. On the outside, they're clean, they're white, they're sparkling, but on the inside is dead bones. Jesus wants to look at your trajectory. And actually, I don't want you to be tied down to what has power in my life, or am I currently have sin that I'm struggling through? Listen, all of us have temptations. None of us are perfect. One of the dangers of this verse is that we actually can put ourselves in the center of the story. We can read Romans 6:6-7 and think I'm the main character, but I'm not. It's when I'm crucified with Christ. The focal point of that passage is Christ. That when I'm crucified with Christ, what I'm accepting is his death and resurrection in my life. That when God looks at me, what he sees is the face of Jesus. He doesn't see what has power in our lives. He sees what Jesus did for us. He doesn't see our sin, he sees his son. And that's the power of Romans 6:6-7. For we are no longer slaves to sin. That we've been actually, God's given us the ability to be set free and say, no, I'm resisting this temptation because the power of Christ. But let's never forget the focal point of that passage, that it's Jesus is in the center. And what Jesus wants from you is a trajectory change. Repent actually means to do a 180, to go from one way to the other. And that's what Jesus wants from you. Is that in this moment, may you be actually set free from the power of sin, the trajectory of sin, and be replaced by the grace of God as we look to him and say, Jesus, it is only possible because of your crucifixion. And because of that, may we follow you wholeheartedly and live into the life you've offered us. And that is Romans 6:6-7.